welcome back to the podcast. Today we have an amazing guest, is Cameron Cushman, former Army infantryman and fellow filmmaker. I've admired your work, and so it's fun to have you on and finally get to talk to you in this long form. We've contacted each other kind of a little bit over the years, and it's finally awesome to sit down and just have an awesome conversation with you.
Heck yeah, man, for sure, dude. Yeah, we've jumped on the phone a few times. We've talked about Black Rifle. We've talked about. Yeah. I reached out about that project I wanted to do going back to Afghanistan, and I've talked to a lot of people since then, and I've got a lot of people interested, and a lot of people like, man, you're stupid.
It was funny. I brought that up with the last podcast with Mikkel. We talked about his book and the Afghan evac, and I talked about that, and I was like, man, Cameron called me, and I was like, you insane, but that's awesome. Yeah. And I'll do it. I was like, it's like, who's going to back you? But it's an amazing idea. It's for wild, sure.
We'll see if it ever happens.
I know exactly. Like there's so many emotions coming from that. I'm like, okay, but yeah, that was a wild idea to return back to Afghanistan.
100%, man. It's been done with every other war, but in a period, maybe like 10, 20 plus years later, not, 2 years later.
Exactly. Yeah. And the whole Taliban Twitter account is always funny with what they're posting. It's like we no longer kidnap civilians, which it's a hell of a slogan for tourism.
They're looking for that, they're wanting to make themselves look good in the eyes of the media. So,
yeah, I know. Right. Yeah. So, all right. So let's just start off from the beginning. Like, where did your journey begin to, where are you from and what got you into the Army?
Yeah, man, for sure. So from Vero Beach, Florida, originally on the East Coast, grew up kind of back and forth between Florida and New England, strong like roots in New England, but moved to Florida and was doing the photography thing right out of high school, kind of working a lot in like the modeling industry, South Florida, Miami kind of, was the thing. And I did that for about 3 years. And I think I was like a beach bum for one of those years in there. But sometime around 2010, man, I was like, I need more adventure in my life. I need it. And it was literally like I just woke up one day because my family doesn't have a strong like history of military service. My dad is like the farthest thing from a military kind of guy. He like dodged the draft in Vietnam and elected for, like secondary service or whatever they did. Cause there were so many that did. They like, me and my dad have a lot of things in common, but a lot of things we don't have in common. Incredible dude. And he served his community like through a lot of different, programs and stuff like that. But we have big differences on the military. And so I just woke up one day and was like, man, I want to do this, and started doing my research. I'm a big research guy, and I came down, all right, I'm joining the Army or I'm joining the Marines, and it's infantry and nothing else. Mm-hmm. And so I talked to a Marine recruiter on the phone, and I don't know why. I don't know what the reason was why I didn't pursue the Marines, because that was who I talked to first. And what I think it was is when I went and saw the Army recruiter, typical recruiter, right? Like, I'm like, listen, infantry is all I want to do. And he's like, well, listen, man, you got that like personality of a Delta guy. And so I see that for you. And I was like, all right, yeah, sure. Let's do it. And so that's probably what it was. And, dude, it's really funny. I remember going to MEPS, in Miami. And so I get there and, you do all the tests, and, you remember the colorblind test? It's like that book with like numbers and like, it's all little dots. And the guy that's administering the test is not even looking at me. He's actively in a conversation with somebody else, and I'm calling them all off. And at the very end, he's like, you're colorblind. You can't be in the infantry. And I was like, I'm gonna pause you there. And I was like, what do you mean, sir? He's like, you got them all wrong. And I was like, sir, I got them all right. I was like, I'm a photographer. Like, I'm pretty sure color is important to my eyes. And he's like, well, clearly it isn't. And so my recruiter's like, what the, dude, why didn't you tell me that you're colorblind? I was like, cause I'm not colorblind, bro. And so I went to a civilian eye doctor, took the same test and passed, and then brought that back to MEPS. And the guy, it was the same dude. And he's like, I'm going to retest you. And there is no cheating. And I was like, how do you cheat on this? And so I passed. And so, I was in like what everyone was in, like the delayed entry program or whatever they called it. And, set to go to basic, which for the Army, for infantry guys, it's one-stop unit training. So you do your basic and AIT together at Fort Benning. So went there, got there in August, and we were like the last high-speed, high-stress cycle. So you're in the Army, you're like in red cycle, you know, like red, white and blue cycles, and they get easier throughout. We were in like the red one, and the Army, it seems like the Marine Corps just like what works. And the Army's like, let's test everything. So it's like every single new basic, every rotation is like, they add a week, they subtract a week, they add 2 weeks, they subtract 2 weeks, you know, like let's allow phones. Let's not allow phones. But yeah, went to Benning. At the time, it was the home of the infantry. Now it's a school of excellence, which is just the stupidest thing on earth. So after going to one-stop unit training, I got orders to Alaska. So headed up to Fort Wainwright, which for a Florida boy, it was pretty cold. I got there like December, like December 18th, or it was either that or right after. No, it was before Christmas because I ate Popeyes for Christmas at the PX. But it was, it was right before Christmas, dude. We got off the airplane at like 2 a.m. and it was like negative 27. I was like,
oh, that's rough.
This is what we're doing. This is what we're going for. But dude, man, like I follow a lot of pages now that talk shit on Fort Wainwright, and they're like, this, like just absolutely obliterated, man. When I was there, dude, it sucks wherever you are, right? Like when you're in, you're like, this is trash. But when you get out, you're like, damn, dude, that was the good life, man. Like I miss it. And man, just comparing my time at Fort Wainwright with the 25th Infantry, I was with 124. But comparing my time there to my time at Hood is just like night and day. Like Hood is a fucking cesspool. I don't know if I can say fuck on this podcast, but
no, you can. You're good. Yeah, it's a free reign. Yeah,
cool.
Do whatever.
But it is literally a fucking cesspool, dude. Like it's as bad as everyone says it is. And I mean, now they've changed the name, but yeah, man. So deployed downrange to Afghanistan, 11 and 12. And so we fell like during like 2 campaigns when they like switched the campaigns on us. We were, there on that kind of that big coin counterinsurgency, hearts and minds, like, don't shoot back at anybody, blow through. Right. So we were like never in direct like engagement. All we were doing was like QRF. And so we were QRF with Navy EOD, which those dudes like top dogs, better than any other EOD that we ever worked with. And we were doing QRF for, pretty much just IED stuff every single day. It's so interesting. Like when you look at deployments, like, you and like you compare, everyone is so different. Their deployments are so different and how it affects each person. And like, we've got friends who and yourself who've probably engaged, directly with the enemy under 100 yards and who like are like, let's go. And then you've got dudes who have like heard a pop shot go off 700 yards away and are like in the fetal position. And like I talked to a lot of dudes who did nothing with IEDs, like never crossed them. And that's like all we did, whether it was like one of our vehicles getting blown up or us going and recovering blown up vehicles. So it's definitely like a really unique experience. And, we can talk about that later, but we've got into, the thought process of like war in Afghanistan and our thoughts probably are a lot different now, but, jumping into, I guess, like, cause the health thing is kind of part of my story and I'll cliff notes it as much as I can, but got sick in Afghanistan. So we got like a bad batch of water. McKinley, I think that was the brand that everyone wanted. It was like a Coca-Cola branded water that was always tasted like water. And we had got this other batch that was like, you shook it and it was sand.
Oh shit. Really?
Oh dude, it was nasty, man. I'll never understand this, but why is the water that we drink in country bottled in country, or at least in one of the surrounding countries? Yeah. I'm just saying, if somebody comes to America, I'm probably going to taint, like if we're invaded, I'm going to taint the water source they're drinking from, So it's quite funny that we can fly Burger King to Afghanistan and Iraq, but we can't bring in American water. So anyways, we all got super sick, real bad dysentery and everything like that. And, mid-fighting season. So we're still doing like 20+ hour patrol days and, shitting our pants and throwing up on patrol. And it seemed to linger with me for a long time. And like I had blood in my stool, and everyone listening to this now is gonna be like, damn, this dude's all messed up in his stomach. But I had blood in my stool for years, dude. And like straight diarrhea started in 2011 and it's 2024 now. And I've like had one solid crap since then.
No shit. So not service related though, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, right. But when I got back to the States, they sent me to all the specialists. They're doing upper endoscopies, colonoscopies, and like, dude, well, here's the deal. The good news is we don't see anything wrong with you. The bad news is we don't know why you're bleeding. And so I'm like, cool. And so later on, they found a tiny hiatal hernia in my stomach, which 1 out of 3 men develop them in their lifetime. If you got reflux, you have a hiatal hernia. But by the time I got to Fort Hood, my hernia was so bad that like if I was doing push-ups, I hit a bump in a car, reflux was just pouring out of my mouth. And it got to the point where I was having to see specialists. They're putting me on every medication there is, and I'm responding to none of them. So they send me to a surgeon. She's like, listen, we're going to do this surgery called a Nissen fundoplication, where we take your upper stomach, wrap it around your lower esophagus to re-strengthen the sphincter and close and remove the hernias. And so they go in, they find not only the sliding hiatal hernia, but a paraesophageal hernia, which is like a super dangerous and really rare hernia that sits on the outside of the stomach. And what it does is over time, it like twists the stomach, basically cutting off its circulation, and it can kill it, like the stomach will die. So they didn't know I had that one. And a few days later, man, I knew something was wrong after the surgery, was struggling to breathe. So I went back to the surgeon. I was like, listen, can you give me a barium swallow or some type of x-ray? And just, if you've ever had a barium, nobody asks for that. It's like drinking chalk. And I'm like begging, can you please give me one? She's like, no, it's PTSD from the surgery. And I went in there almost every day for a month, and like my chest was wheezing, and she's like, there's no noise. Finally, she's like, whatever, we'll do the barium. They do the barium. X-ray doc is laughing as he sees this. He's like, dude, you should see the size of this hernia crushing your lung right now. And what happened was the whole hernia, or the surgical site, had came undone because she didn't do a good job with it. And the paraesophageal hernia came back and was basically like encapsulating it all, pushing on my lung. Yeah. And so they go and do an emergency upper endoscopy the next day, and they can't even get the camera past it. So it butterflies. So it hits basically the surgical site and turns around. And so the same surgeon does my surgery the next day, and she cuts my vagus nerve. We didn't know this for months later, but she cuts my vagus nerve when she redoes the Nissen. And it was months later when I finally was learning how to re-eat, because you kind of have to learn how to eat again. And I had like severe esophageal spasms, basically a heart attack sensation. It's kind of like choking, but you're not choking.
Okay.
And finally, they sent me to a bunch of other specialists. They're like, dude, you're all messed up. I do this gastric emptying study. And so you basically eat this like radioactive egg, right? And then you do an x-ray every 15 minutes for like 4 hours. And at the end of the 4 hours, it showed my emptying of my stomach was at 0%. So like any normal human is at least between 90 and 100% at 4 hours, right? Most food's gone. And I was like full, hey, look, it's an egg. And so they diagnosed me at that point with gastroparesis, and they suspected that I had vagal nerve damage from the surgery. And so gastroparesis is just stomach paralysis in simple terms. But so they finally sent me to this Mayo Clinic surgeon. He was an Air Force guy, and he was like, listen, man, this is we're doing 1 of 3 surgeries, and I don't know which one it is. So you're signing this release that, hey, brother, it's one or the other. And so it was either going to go back in, undo everything she did, try to see if my body could naturally not need any surgery, of the weirdness, or undo what she did, redo it. And then the final option, which was the last resort, was do a pyloroplasty, which basically opens the bottom sphincter of the stomach. So the sphincter that's between your stomach and your upper intestines, and open it. So it just, everything that fell in would fall through, because say I ate on a Tuesday, if I went and did an upper endoscopy on a Friday, the food was still in my stomach. And it's like the nauseating level is just absolutely nuts. And humidity and heat cause you to flare up. Most people with gastroparesis are women, and it's typically idiopathic, so no known cause. And they're throwing up consistently. But because of the Nissen, I physically can't throw up, which fucking sucks. Everyone's like, oh, that'd be so cool to not throw up. I'm like, dude, no, when you're fucking sick and your body knows it can't, like,
it needs to go.
My body is still trying. Like, I can feel my stomach just pound in the surgical site. And one day I'm gonna end up choking to death on the surgical site because the paraesophageal hernia is already back. But no one will touch me. And so they go in for that third surgery, and I wake up and he's like, hey man, we had to do what we didn't want to do. We had to do the pyloroplasty. He's like, I've never seen so much damage on somebody your age in my career. And he was like, and this is like a surgeon, like, who only does like messed up cases. And he's like, it looked like somebody had cut you open and just stabbed you all over with a scalpel. He's like, if the best way I could describe your insides would be like a 800 person that's on their 10th gastric bypass. Which is confident, you know, like, you're like, oh, cool, dude. And so, the pyloroplasty causes what's called dumping syndrome. And so it's kind of what it sounds like. It's kind of not. So anytime you eat, it immediately will fall out, right? And so, like, I'll be on the bathroom in like a minute. But the main like concern is like severe hypoglycemia, because what happens is when your food doesn't naturally break down, when it passes through your intestines, which hold most of your nutrients, like the food passing pulls basically all the nutrients out with it. And so hypoglycemia is like a severe, you know, like concern for me. And so I'm not diabetic. My glucose, like, it does go higher than some people because the vagal nerve damage, it doesn't know how to regulate itself right. But I'm not diabetic. I'm like severely hypoglycemic. And so I was hitting numbers like in the 15s, 20s, 30s, like 5, 6, 7 times a day. And the average human, if you hit 70 right now, you would pass out most likely, you know, and I was down 20s, 30s. I had a seizure in my sleep, and they, like, the number for that, I was at a 12, like, you die at 0. And anything below 50, you're burning brain cells, risk of a coma. So, like, when I think back to 2016, 2015, I don't remember shit. Like, I remember going to doctor's appointments for my kids and like them being like, "Yo, what's their birthday?" And I'm sitting there like, I don't know. And they're like, "Wow, what a piece of shit dad." And I'm like, "Fuck you. I don't." You know, and at this point I'm being told, dude, I'm never working again. Like, I need a feeding tube. I need permanent TPMs. I need a pacemaker. And I denied all of it. And I was in a dark place, dude, for a long time because my situation was so unique, man. I had nobody to relate to, you know, like the thoughts of war in my head weren't even in my head anymore. You know, like people are like, "Oh man, you went to Afghanistan. What was it like?" I'm like, dude, I don't have time to think about Afghanistan. I'm thinking about my fucking stomach. Because I'm nauseous 24/7, dude. It doesn't go away. I'm super nauseous right now. But I've been living like this for 8 years. And so it's normal. You know, they obviously found me unfit for duty, started the medical retirement process in spring of 2016. And my initial rating appointment with the VA, it was this fucking, like PA, right? And I was supposed to have a specialist. She's eating spaghetti while she's doing my thing. I'm eating baby food at the time, right? One, government employees are like in the VA are not allowed to eat in their office, and she's eating during this review. And I remember she's looking at my claims, dude, and she goes, "Gastroparesis? Don't you mean gastritis?" And I was like, "Ma'am, I fucking wish reflux was my problem again," you know? And so I got an initial 80%, and you know, a lot of people that just looked at me because I looked normal were like, "You should be grateful for that." And a lot of people were also like, "Dude, because I'm being told I'm never working again," you know? And like an Army surgeon cut my vagus nerve out of complacency. Like how, you know? And so I remember I got the lawyer, we petitioned it while I was still active, and they came back, "We have great trust and faith in our appointed officials," you know, blah, 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 and no change. And I remember walking into the VA, and I think about this all the time, and I don't know how the hell I wasn't like arrested or anything, but I walked into the VA, and I mean, dude, there's full bird colonels there, the sergeant majors there, first sergeants, and I'm in uniform. And I walked in, and I stormed in the VA clinic, and I was going to that lady's office, and I was like, "This is," because she denied things that I had like the paperwork on. That was what pissed me off the most. And I remember just yelling, I was like, this is why people fucking kill themselves in the VA parking lots. And as I came back out, the like secretary or whatever, the front desk lady was like, excuse me, what are you doing? And I went off on her. And all these like the full bird colonel, the sergeant major, they're just like, damn, he's right. Nobody said shit. And so I remember I went out to my car and just sobbed, dude, like for an hour. And I got out and I finally did, get reevaluated and get to where I needed to be. But, dude, it was a fucking journey, man. Like the first few years of living like this were hard. And don't get me wrong, I still have shit days, dude. I'm nauseous every day. I'm in pain every day, but, I wanted nothing to do with the military community when I got out, like nothing at all. I hate it. Cause dude, I mean, like the second you're injured, especially as an infantryman, it's like shitbag, I was about to go to the 6th board at 5 years, you can't say I'm a shitbag in the same sentence. And, and then finally, after I got out about a year and a half later, 2 years later, I saw a nonprofit was taking dudes down the Devil's River in Texas. And that's where I found my healing when I was transitioning out, and reached out and I said, man, I want to help y'all out. I want to tell your story. And he was like, I can't pay you, brother. And I was like, I'll do it for free. And so I drove to Texas, filmed a buddy of mine's wedding to get some money out of it, drove all the way out there. I was at the stop sign before the bed and breakfast. And I was like, what am I doing, dude? I turned around and I got like, I don't know, 500 yards. And I was like, no, dude, go help tell some people's stories. And so I went and did that. And that kind of like started my filmmaking journey with the veteran world. And since then, man, I've been blessed to work with a lot of organizations in the veteran space, from Stop Soldier Suicide, Two Wolf Foundation, Project Healing Waters. There's probably a bunch more, but that's kind of where I live now, man, is in the veteran community doing marketing, social media stuff. And really the film and photography is, my jam and my big passion, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's, it sucks because, that your story is a whole nother extreme, but we've heard that kind of stuff over the years. I got out in 2009 and I just remember the VA was horrific. Like it was, I went into the Minnesota, VA Snell after I got out. I was like, because immediately they were like, go to the VA, no matter what, they'll deny you, but just get your claims in. Yeah. Like they were just like, just get yourself in the books, just because you're going to need it for future, purposes. And I did, so, but I remember getting in there and at the time they denied, they're like, they're going to deny you everything except tinnitus because they can't prove it. Yeah. They can't disprove
10% so tinnitus.
Yeah, no matter what. And I was like, that's what I got. And I was like, okay, whatever. I have upped it since then. But yeah, it took, some guys, it's just like, it's almost scary sometimes, like with like what you had to deal with like the military doctors, and there's nothing you can do. You can't sue. You can't go see someone else. Yep. You can't get referred, you know what I mean? And I think my wife, I'd lived a few lives before we had gotten married, and she's like shocked by what the military, like what you can't do, like even like adultery, like she was like, you can lose rank and be punished for like adultery. And I was like, yeah. I was like, it's how they keep like discipline. Like there's nowhere else in the world, I'm going to that world, but like in the US by law, like you can't get fired from like, some big corporate, Best Buy for adultery, like it doesn't matter. But like, yeah. And that's always scared me when I was to relate, within that military culture was like the fact that I didn't get like NJP'd, arrested, you know what I mean? Like didn't go to Leavenworth. Like that was on our minds in 2005, 2009. Yeah. Was like, don't shoot the wrong person. Like there was times when we're in firefights and like, it was all up to your command. Is your command going to burn you or do they support you? And to get through like 3 deployments and like not like accidentally get thrown in the brig or like, it's just like in your head, you're trying to avoid the brig. Yeah. Like sometimes, and because they could just throw you in for whatever, or your career and your life takes a turn because somebody just doesn't give a shit, and like I said, you're in the, and especially with like you in the medical stuff, it's like, that shit scares me the most, like when I was like, there's no, these people aren't, I hate to say it, God bless them, but at the same time, you're like, these aren't the top tier
No,
people that are coming in.
It's possible. There are some, my third,
Yeah,
the surgeon that did my third was that guy. He joined for the right reason. He already had a stellar career at Mayo, but like we know damn well the one that did my first and second surgery, she was the bottom scoring person and had no other option. And now she's out here working on civilians in Illinois or Ohio or somewhere, wherever the hell she is. But which is scary.
And that's what I mean. Like, it is scary. Yeah. Especially, but it's like that trade-off, with the military. Like sometimes it's really good and sometimes it's bad. And like, man, we were just talking about, I had my brother's family up for Christmas and he's still active duty in the Marine Corps. And it's like TRICARE, it's like National Guard was great because like I was in the Guard for about 7 years and after my Marine Corps time. And it was funny because like TRICARE as a civilian is phenomenal. Like it's the best because it's great healthcare, but it's all civilian doctors. Like you can, but when you're active duty, it sucks. You're at the mercy of military hospitals. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's this weird trade-off, and, you just hope to God you don't have to, you get like someone good, but yeah, man, that's a rough road.
Dude, I mean, even in the civilian world, the medical world is scary, dude. Like the third leading cause of death is like malpractice, like. Yeah.
It's wild. Yeah. And then especially with, all the conditions you're working with. I mean, so how do you go about it then? I won't say day to day, because you just talked about how you're in pain, or is you just been used to it? Is there kind of like a routine and, like I said, I know you got a few kids, so how do you navigate
4
that?
kids, man. It's the kids that saved my life. I guess I didn't really hit on that when this was like really at its worst, when I was like getting out, transitioning and like it, just in a dark place. And, my daughter, she was probably 2.5, 3 years old at the time. And every day, Dad, can you bring me to the park? Dad, can you bring me to the park? And every day, no. And shit, probably after 30, 40 days, one day she didn't ask. And I was like, I'm a fucking piece of shit. I wasn't, but I felt that way, and because I lived in bed or in the shower, dude, like that was where I lived. It was finding the outdoors is like life-changing for me. Like I've always been outdoors, but getting back to it and realizing like, shit, there's power out here. My nausea would like decrease slightly. My glucose wouldn't seem to plummet as much. And ended up seeing a bunch of specialists, a bunch of endocrinologists, and they kind of came up with, listen, dude, like your endorphins are just shooting through the roof when you're out there, that it's translating, somehow into what you need. It's giving you the glucose that you need, and kind of just this medical miracle, and man, dude, it's a learning curve every day, dude. There is no right answer. Some days I can eat something and the next day I can't. And I've never responded to medication, unfortunately. So meds don't help me with any type of nausea or pain. Some meds do, but they have to be through an IV, and I'm not going to go get IV treatment every day. And so, yeah, man, I'm just used to the shit is really what it is, man. And there's days when it's good and there's days when it's bad. And it just like it sucked majorly, like from a mental standpoint for, the first 2 years. And I realized after that, like, shit, dude, I can do whatever the hell I want now. Like, let's go fucking learn to run a marathon. And that's what we're doing right now. And, maybe next year I'm like, because dude, like in my community of like invisible illness with people with gastroparesis and a lot of my symptoms, if you go into the support groups, I made a big post on this on LinkedIn not too long ago. I had been kicked out of like 2 different support groups for posting thumbs up photos. Like, hey guys, you got this. It's going to be a good day. And I'd been kicked out of the groups because I was too positive, and not everybody can be positive. Bullshit. I don't care what situation you're in. You can find somewhere in there a way to be positive. And listen, I'm going to be in pain, whether I'm sitting on my couch or I'm sitting by a lake. I'm not going to choose the couch, every time. Yeah. And so a lot of people, dude, misery loves company. That is true to its core. If people who are miserable, they want to stay miserable. And it takes a lot to get out of that, man. And you know, how everyone approaches that is different. And I just realized like, dude, I can do hard shit, and I'm going to keep finding harder shit to do because it's helping me mentally. You know, and this year I'm now dealing with this new battle of anxiety that I'd never experienced before. And that's just a shit show, and no idea where that stems from. And with my vagus nerve damage, like most people, when they have a panic attack, right? Like they're breathing really heavily. Their heart is pounding. Mm-hmm. Shit, dude, I'll be mid panic attack. I mean, bad. And I'm sitting here I'll be looking at my heart rate and I'm at like a 65 because my vagus nerve isn't sending signals like something's wrong. Let's pump up your alert systems. So like my body just like will send half-ass signals. And so this new anxiety that started last April, but haven't really found, I found a few things that kind of help it, but the ice baths, cold water therapy helps it. But only if it's like I'm actively in it and I can jump in and it'll stop one. But if I'm out in the middle of nowhere, I can't do anything about it. But yeah,
and I agree. I don't know. It's super common among vets right now. And I don't know, everyone I know, it's interesting you're saying that in the last year. Mine kicked out of nowhere in 2019. And I mean, like out of nowhere. And same with guys that I know. Another good friend of mine was like, dude, I thought I was having a heart attack. And I did too. Like I never, and it was like, and it was in a situation where it was like super boring. Yeah. I was like sitting down. I was on a Kuwait deployment for the National Guard, but we were in Camp Arifjan. Like it was super chill, AC all day. I was the NCOIC for the PSD team. So I didn't even go out on mission. I just sat in front of the computer and made the missions, make sure everything ran smoothly. And I just had I was like, I thought I was going to throw up. I was like, it was weird. You know, like it was just, we were in a meeting, super standard. And I was like, I'm going to throw up. Like, it's kind of, all right, maybe I'm sick. You know, we're in Kuwait. You know, it's not the first time I got dysentery or something weird. And, but I was like about to pass out. My heart was racing. I thought I was like shaking. I was, you know what I mean? I was like going down. And then, the same thing, man. And then we saw the doc because my blood pressure was like through the roof.
Yeah.
And and the guy's like, oh yeah, the panic attack. And he goes, you done? What have you done? I was like, well, 9 deployments. I got 3 combat official, but another 5 as a WIPS contractor in Afghanistan, you know, been shot, blown up, everything, all stuff. And he just looks at me, he goes, yeah, that's it. He goes, your nervous system shot. It's like that, whatever one I was.
Yeah, your fight or flight. Your vagus nerve is connected to that, but there's also this interesting thing called like a ganglion. It's relatively new in the anxiety space, and it's starting to be like tested for PTSD and anxiety, but they do what's called like a ganglion block. I've heard it helps some people, it doesn't help others, but basically they take this like tiny, like, anesthetic and put it into this like one spot in the nerve in your neck. And it's basically like hitting the reset button. So it's not shutting off your fight or flight, right? It is resetting it to a normal level. Because you got to think like combat MOS is you're trained to be in a state of awareness the entire time and you're never untrained.
Yeah.
And so like,
exactly.
My wife always has said, she's like, you're always on edge, you know, like I've never seen you not, you know, at this state of panic. And, it's the human brain just is so interesting when you think about it. Like, especially anxiety attacks, like you'll be mid one and like, I'm dying, like mine replicate my health issues. And so I just think I'm having a health issue. And then 30 minutes after it's gone, I'm like, what the fuck were you even upset about? Like nothing happened, you dumbass. You know?
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like, it was like, I had a really bad one at the gym too. Like, it was like, they had an ambulance called. I was about to go out even worse than before. And then they just took they even took like I don't know if they drew blood there or not. I think they might've, just to like check. Yeah. And they're like, oh yeah, you're healthy. They're like, you're a little low on sugar, but you just got done with a workout. Yeah. So your like level is normal for someone finishing a workout. They're like, you're fine. Your heart's fine. Everything's fine. You're 100. They're like, actually, you're in really good shape.
Yeah.
And I was like, cool, thanks, man. I almost like passed out, you know, and like literally like laying on the floor, body went into shock. My body went cold. Like, and then it was kind of like ever since then, 2019, like I just go like in and out of flows, kind of, you know, like not full on, but it's definitely there. It can get exacerbated, and you know, and sometimes I wake up at night, and you know, my doc, who's cool. He's, again, talk about finding a good doc. I found a doc that was Air Force. I think he was a medical while he was there, so he's like a doc, but he was in the Air Force for a while, and he did Afghan back in like 2012. Okay. So he's awesome, and I just tell him like right away, I'm like, look, man, I'm fine, but sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night with a panic attack. What can you give me? And I'm not taking shit every day. And he's like, nope, totally get it, man. Like, take this if you need it. It'll, you know, kind of put you back to sleep. It's a downer, but it, you know, whatever. And so I just have it next to my bedstand, and haven't had to use it yet.
Yeah.
But, you know, but it's just that weird thing of you don't, you know, and that's my, you know, now you get like anxiety because of that. It's like, now I'm like, am I going to have a panic attack while I'm like talking to people that I need to talk? You know what I mean? Like, it's more anxiety for me now if I'm like, shit, am I going to go into a panic attack? Because I don't feel it, but is that going to pop up while I'm giving a speech, while I'm at a conference, and while I'm, you know, for no reason? It's just, now I'm going to, you know, my, you know, and so it's that excitement to do things. Sometimes you're like, is this it? But it's not, because you're excited, you know, and I know that, but it's like, but is my body going to, you know, I know that, but is my body going to do that? Does my body know that?
No,
you know? But no, I agree, man. It's a wild thing, especially.
And nowadays. That's like a big part of mine now is when I can pinpoint what's causing it. It is the fear of having a panic attack. Like I'll be driving and I'll be like, damn, what if I had a panic attack right now? And then I flew off the road because I passed out and no one found me for 6 hours, you know? And then and I'm like, I'm not going to have a panic attack. And then immediately it's like, boom, you know, like, dumbass.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Don't think that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh,
no shit.
Man.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, you, when you're getting out, you're going through this whole process, and you did photography, like you said before, what kind of then, I mean, you just kind of like, I don't say default back to that. I mean, because I've seen your work and it's amazing.
I appreciate it.
So you know, did you just be like, all right, now transitioning, I have a family, you know, I'm going to pursue filmmaking, photography? Is that just kind of a natural evolution, or did you kind of like try to figure that out?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'd say while I was still shooting, right? Like, as much as I hate portraits, if anyone asks like, hey, could you take a portrait, you know, of me and my wife or whatever, I did those while I was in. And then I was doing some like fishing content towards the end. And around 2014, I was like, man, I kind of think I should learn video. Like not just GoPro stuff, but like learn true video. And I had what camera did I have at the time? I had sold like my 5Ds, my Canon 5Ds when I joined. I think I had the Canon 70, which was the very first digital SLR to have full 1080 video. And so I just started shooting, man. And then when I got out, I just was shooting things that like were fun to me. And I decided to go back to school because I needed to make some type of money. And so I went to school a few hours away from me, because I knew the BAH was like $2,900. And so I just, you know, I commuted, I commuted the 2 hours one way, 4 days a week. And so I went to the Art Institute of Fort Lauderdale, and,
oh, no shit.
Which I didn't learn shit there, to be honest. I did learn things, but it was because I was actively just doing things on my own. Right. And, I learned a lot about audio. Audio was one thing that like I did learn a lot about, and the school like forced me to do my own thing. But like, if I look at my peers, because the Art Institute like shut down for a reason. When they sold to like Goldman and Sachs, 10, 20 plus years ago, like they went downhill then. Like there was a like good school 20 years ago. And then now they're all closed. But, you know, and so I went there, and it was the quarter, because we were quarters, not semesters. It was the quarter before I was supposed to graduate with my associates, and that school closed. And so at this time I'd been getting a good amount of work. I was doing a lot of weddings, which what filmmaker hasn't done weddings? And that was, helping me out big time. And so shortly after, I could have changed to Miami. Miami stayed open, but even though Miami's like 20 minutes as a bird flies, it's like an hour and a half with traffic. And so there was no way I was doing a 4-hour drive every day one way. And so I just elected, I said, screw it. technically, I think I get all my GI Bill back, because if the school closes, there's like a clause within the GI Bill that you can get all your hours back. So I'm too busy. I'd have to give it to like my kid or my wife. And yeah, I had done a few passion projects, like short fly fishing films. Me and a buddy drove out to California and back from Florida. It was 7,992 miles. I made this short 2.5-minute film that I credit giving me all of my work to this day. I look at it now and I'm like, this is trash. But
you always look at your own stuff.
I say that about an edit I did yesterday. At 2019, somebody reached out and said, hey man, I work for this magazine. Would you be interested in producing a TV show for the Outdoor Channel? And I was like, I never produced a TV show, but let's do it. And, I'm like calling friends like, dude, how much do you charge for this? Like, what does this look like? And how much work is this going to be? And, the team there, they walked me through it all. And, it was a great learning experience. It's cool to see work you've done air globally, and,
yeah, that's awesome.
I despise it as my work. One thing I'll say for creatives is like, man, make sure you have like shit in a contract if it's talked about. And what was talked about in all the phone calls for me was, you've got full creative freedom. I want it to look like your work and tell the story that you tell. And when I delivered the very first episode, and I think it would have been one of the best fishing shows, they were like, this isn't what we want. And we want this. And I was like, but that's not what you hired me for, And so it just, the show ended, and we redid the first episode, and it just doesn't look or feel like my work. And there's like a lot of mistakes, a lot of things that I don't like about it, but from a learning experience, is great, and great for the portfolio. There's a lot of times I forget that I did that, but I did that up through 2020. And then COVID came around. And like at the time, no industry knew what the hell was going on. The outdoor industry was pulling back budget, which the outdoor industry in 2021 saw the biggest growth it ever had. And so they canceled the show moving forward. And then all the rest of my freelance work just like started falling off the map. And man, I got 4 kids, even at 100% disability. Like I can't afford to raise my wife, I think she was back to being a stay-at-home mom again. And so, dude, I started looking for work in the full-time world. I remember applying to companies like 10 minutes after the job had been posted, and there was 3,000 applicants. Or interviewing for a trailer company in Texas, Trailers, dude, like had 3 Emmy people that were interviewing with me, because Hollywood has shut down before anyone else. And so everyone's just like on this panic. And I remember I was at the beach one day, and I mean, at this point, we're burning through savings, and because I'm making nothing besides disability. And I'm at the beach one day, and I get this message on Instagram from some like random profile. This dude's like got like 2 posts, and he's like, hey man, I'm a supervisor at this company in Missouri. You're the perfect fit. You want a job? And I hadn't made any posts on social media that I was looking for work, which I probably should have. And so we jumped on a phone call, and I was like, dude, what's the salary? And he tells me, he's like, man, it's around 40,000. And I laughed. I literally laughed out loud. I was like, dude, no way in hell, dude. I can't survive off of that. And you want me to move too? And so he's like, what do you want? And I told him, I was like, dude, man, I need at least 80. And because we were coming off this bougie lifestyle of making really good money doing the show and all my other contracts. Yeah. And so, he's like, oh yeah, there ain't no way. And he's like, so I guess there's no point moving forward. I was like, no, there isn't. And I was like, good luck, dude. And so, dude, it's like 20 minutes later, their recruiter calls me and is like, hey, what can you do? And at this point, because my wife was like, obviously we can't survive off 40, but maybe you could have negotiated, And so we negotiate. I told her, listen, this is the bare I can do. And she was like, all right. And they actually ended up giving me 5,000 more than that. And I started the trend of creatives at that company getting paid, I think, what they're worth. And dude, I mean, you're in the Midwest, like the Midwest just doesn't pay creatives as much as they should, because they think that cost of living is lower. That you can't use cost of living as an excuse anymore. It don't matter where you live. You're sucking.
And that's a battle in the industry. I mean, like I came from like, you know, you got it's, you know, it's awesome that you start picking up work right away. I got done 2016. I finished film school and jumped in, and it's just like Minnesota's it's a good area, but it's not, you know what I mean? Like it's just that weird, like you can make a living, but it's not the best living. You get in, but it's like a medium pond with like medium fish, like, and you can definitely get up to places, but it's definitely networking. And so like right away, and I was with guys that have been in the industry for like 20 years, and it's still kind of like, and they were good too. I was doing aerial cinematography, you know, with drones. Drones were new at the time, or not new, but they were still in that mid-tier time. But that was a race to the bottom, you know. And once you get that network going, and it's like now I can be like, nah, I'm not doing this job. Like, you know, that's not my day rate. Like, it's not at all. Like, I'm a, you know, but back then, you know, you're doing like, yeah, I remember not even getting paid for jobs. Like, you know, you were like just trying to get your work out there. But I agree with you though. Sometimes it's this weird thing in creative world where it's like it's like the negotiation always frustrates me no matter what, when you're talking with the clients. Like, do you negotiate for the price of milk?
Right.
Or when you go, you know what I mean? Like when you go and buy a laptop, do you negotiate with Apple?
Right.
They go, yeah, we want $2,000. Do you go, you know what, I'll give you like 1,200.
That's such a thing in the freelance world, dude. And people are so afraid to be like, no, you know, like, and dude, I saw this post on LinkedIn. I don't know if you pay attention to like global trends in the filmmaking world, but day rates in like UK are terrible. Like the average day rate for a good DP is like $800 at the most. And
really, for like experienced
dude,
DPs.
And somebody commented, he was like, the reason that our rates are so low is because nobody stood up and said, no, we are, as a mass, we are raising our rates, and the companies take advantage of it. Cause I talked to friends over there, their marketing budgets are just as big, if not bigger than some of ours here. And they're just pocketing it all. And somebody had made a comment. They're like, this is so out of touch. You can't just tell people to go raise their rates because nobody's going to pay it. I was like, sure, there's going to be a struggle period, but that's a thing. And you probably have peers, or I've experienced it. You've probably experienced it. So many people get stuck in this like limbo where they're not charging enough. And so they're not getting work because people aren't taking them as serious. One of my close friends has this happen all the time. He had a big, huge company reach out, send us a proposal. He calls me, goes, dude, I'm thinking about proposing $9,000. And I said, brother, they want to see a number over 100,000. And he was like, there's no way. And so it was him and another buddy, and the other buddy refused to go above. I got them to like 20, but he refused to go over it. And the client came back and said, there might, you know, maybe this isn't going to work. We were expecting something around 140, 145. And so I told my buddy, dude, try to recover the same. Maybe I misunderstood the scope of work. And they were like, no, you know, well, we're just going to put this on pause right now. And, you know, like and so I talked to a lot of young people in their career. They're like, man, I'm not getting any work. I'm not getting any work. And I'm like, well, dude, what's your day rate nowadays? And they're like, you know, I'm at like $800. And I was like, brother, that's why. And he's like, but when I raise it, I've tried raising it. I was like, but you got to get through that tough spot, you know, like, and it's hard, dude. Like anything freelance is hard. Like if you can get past the grind, and dude, like there's you could have a year where you make 250,000 and the next year you make 20, you know, like, especially right now with marketing budgets are getting fucking slashed, you know, nonprofits are pulling their budgets back. Dude, it's a grind, man. But if you can like stick it out, and especially networking, dude, if you can build a community, and that's where the power of LinkedIn is, that just people, especially creatives, don't take full advantage of, man. Like I've built an extremely strong community on LinkedIn. And I know like if the world shits again and I need to go back to the full-time world, which I hope that never happens, I know that I probably could land a job very quickly because I've built this community of people that I support them, you know, they'll support me back. And so that's a huge thing, dude, as a creative, is networking.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the best. I mean, everyone says your network. And even when I was like in film school, that is though. I mean, it truly is. I mean, like every job that you get is most of the time. I mean, I've answered a few posts and gotten work off of that, but like it's building that relationship, and you want to get paid. the good rates or like the rates, you know, that like, okay, I'll do this minimum, but I'm not providing my gear, you know, or I'm not like you pay for everything. I have a travel day, you pay, you know, I'm very happy with those day rates. Like I just show up with my shirt on my back and we rock and roll and then I'm out. Like, and, yeah, that network is the biggest because that's, you know, that's when I do, you know, I worked with Black Rifle and the projects I did were great. But the network I found within that, because I mean, as creatives, like, especially in the veteran community, it's like, yeah, we're vets, but it doesn't mean like, it's not the end, you know, it's not like the end all, you know, they're like, oh, can you actually film and are you good at it? You know? And so when I worked with the other vendors that were coming in, you know, it was awesome building that relationship. Cause as soon as I, you know, they went public and I, you know, they pretty much laid off the whole media department. It was like right away, like, vendors started picking me up. They're like, yep, absolutely. We'll take you. And that was kind of my leap into like paying, you know, before that in Minnesota market, the Minnesota market's tough though too. Cause I have friends that are just super talented. And sometimes it's just like, they're at the $500 a day, but he's got so much work coming in. It's almost exhausting. Like he tells me about it. And then it's like, and he's tried to make the leap and it's just like, you know, the current clients don't want to pay, you know, and if you're not networked into the marketing agencies, they, you know, good fucking luck. And you're right though, that whole thing of like, no, they're looking for $200,000 budgets, you know, dude, that is a scary spot to be in too, by the way. Like sometimes if you just, you know, some people are, you know, oh yeah, let's rock and roll. Like that, you know, that can freak people out. Be like, oh my God, you're about to give me $140,000, you know? And it's like, yeah, but when you start paying people like, dude, like my day rates are for underwater cinematography is $2,500. Like that, you know, and so, and I have a buddy that's in the industry down in Louisiana and he's like, yeah, it's 2,500, you know, cause sometimes I ask like, it's always tough with people. You don't want to like ask the pros. Cause then they're like, oh, you're going to undercut me. You know what I mean? It's like, well, no, I'm not going to I just would like to know though, cause I don't want to be charging 1,500 or 2,000 when I know, especially underwater cinematography. I mean, that's a whole specialty in itself and getting it, that's awesome. But that rental and even rental side is expensive, you know, plus even purchasing equipment. But yeah, you know, like when I got out or not when I got out, but like when I jumped back into freelance in 2022, yeah, man, it was great. It was great too. Cause I was like, no, my editing's $500 a day. And they're like, cool. Yeah. And I was like, oh shit. All right. You know, like, you know, that edit price could be $3,000. They're like, that's fine. And you're like, awesome, you know, and so getting that ball rolling. And it's true though. I mean, at the same time, they're like, cause we're not here to fuck around. You know, I think when you step on some of those bigger projects and sets, you come to fucking play. 100%. So when they're paying you your full day rate, either it's 1,600 or 2,000 or 2,500 a day, it's like, it almost feels good. Cause once you cross that line, they're like, you're worth the money. And it almost is. It's like it is, but it's like buying a new camera or like a nice camera or like a cine lens. Like you know the difference when you pay. You know, it's not just because you paid it; it's because you understand why you paid that much money for that piece of equipment. You know, and it works, and it's better, and it's faster, and it looks. You know how to use your tools better, and it's worth it. You know, so yeah, I agree with you. I think that's tough within our community. You know, like in the creatives, it's like. You know, and even going full time, you know, I got another one on the way, a baby. So it's like my second kid on the way. And, you know, so I've looked at some full time work, but, you know, and even if you're looking at full time just for like, all right, well, I'll throw my hat in the ring for fun and everything, you know, everything's going well, but just, you know, I always have a plan B. You definitely like, there's a point where I'm like, well, I'm not going to do this for any less than this, you know, for like you did, like, I'm not doing $40,000. I'm not doing $60,000. You know what I mean? Like, because then it's like sucking up your time and it's not worth the pay, you know, because you're still going to be taking those jobs that come in. And so you can't be like, well, I'm going to turn down a $7,000 gig because my $2,500 a month or $3,000 a month take home doesn't allow me to, you know, with whatever, you know, company you're with. So that's a trade-off. But yeah, even diving into some communities, but then you look at other spots, the marketing managers, you know, you go into some of these real companies, you got to fight for your pay, but they'll pay 100%. It. You know, I've started to see, you know, talking with friends of mine that are making 140, or, you know, my wife that works in her corporate world, like she knows people that are making the 150, 160, and they're not like fucking, you know, the VP like they're mid-level management. And so you find that, you realize companies will pay for it, but it's still kind of like that, like, that mentality of like, you got to be aggressive about it. And people sometimes I don't think people are
afraid to negotiate. People are afraid to value themselves. Yeah. And there's so many and don't get me wrong, I am one of the biggest advocates for doing passion projects. Like as a creative, I'm working on a project right now. I'll probably lose $1,000 by the end of it, but it satisfies me, and it's putting me into an industry that I've never worked in, that I know now after that film comes out, I'm going to become now a person that goes onto a roster of lists, for companies to be like, shit, this guy came to, to play. And so I always tell people if a company reached out and was like, hey, will you do this for, really cheap? A lot of times I'll say no, unless I know it's going to be, it's this huge thing for my portfolio, or if I'm helping a friend. A buddy of mine recently called and he offered me a very, very, very low rate for 4 days worth of work, bad. And I was like, brother, I love you. And because I've been a big mentor to him. And so I was like, I'm going to do it for you because I know that you want to make that relationship work with that client. So of course I was going to help him out. And I was able to. And, but yeah, the freelance market in general is just such a tricky market, and it's easy to be taken advantage of, especially if you're in a Zoom call and the client's like, so what's it going to cost us? And you're like, shit. And so you could try to well, what's your budget? Because a lot of times young people in their creative career don't realize everyone's a one-man band, right? But when you're a one-man band, technically you should be getting a day rate for every one of those instruments you're playing. So if you're hiring me to direct, to DP, to get photos, I'm charging you 3 day rates for the 1 day, And a lot of people don't realize that. When you tell people that, they're like, what? And it's dude, I mean, and it's every industry is obviously so different, I talked to a guy I know in the outdoor industry, and he's like, dude, I'm trying to find second shooters to pay them $300 a day. And I was like, bro, you got to get with the times. All my buddies who are second shooters in outdoor TV are making $1,200 now. And he's like, how is that possible? And I was like, times are evolving, brother,
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing too is, I mean, and I agree with you too. That's especially when you're fulfilling that role. I mean, it's a great time to be in solo. You can get, especially if you're good at editing and filming, you are, the writing will come into play, you'll figure it out, or I mean, the structure of the story. But that's a huge thing, man. Yeah, you're right, because you're directing, you're producing, you're writing, you're editing. I mean, you're doing graphics at some points. Yeah. You know what I mean? You're running audio. You are doing 4 or 5 jobs. And so that's what I say I'm pretty firm. I only drop my day rate if we're trying to I don't want to say even drop it really. I still keep it up there, but it's hey, I'll bring it $100 or $200 off each rate, but we need to lock in these 4 projects or these 5. So therefore I'm guaranteed 30, 40,000, even though I'm losing, but I'm losing $2,000, but it's but for them, it just gives them, it looks a little nicer on paper, but it's okay, but we are committing to these, because you have to balance that a little bit. But yeah, I agree with you, because you don't want to be oh, well, I'm doing everything. I'm doing everything. And you deliver really good work. So, and honestly, the best companies are just ones that are just we really like it. Here's your check.
And this is such a fact. The higher paying clients, dude, you could turn in the deliverable and they're like, oh, dude, it's good on the first revision. And I'm like, color is not even finished or sound. And they're like, oh, well, yeah, do whatever you need and then just get it to us. And then they cut you a check for $15,000. But then you have a client that you're getting paid $2,000 for, and they're like, revision 37, And so it's funny how clients work like that. And I hear that across every industry, for the lower paying clients, but
yeah. Well, I think that's just because people are pinching pennies at that budget.
For sure. Sure.
Yeah. And it's obviously if you're the bigger client, they're just that's cool, man. We're spending 100, we trust you, and that's what we do, and I think the networking is the biggest part. And I think that's something obviously people emphasize, but they should emphasize that more in film school. Like I went through film school, and that's the one thing I know my professor wanted to add. And I actually should probably link back up with him again, but there should almost be like a business like class at the end of at least film schools and
100%.
because it's, because that's the worst part. And I'll still, say to no end, like I am not a salesman. Like I can be a good one if I need to, but like sometimes that's just a touch, man. Like I can market myself pretty good, but when you're doing everything, it doesn't mean that you're the best at everything. That's one of the things too. It's like, all right, well, I got to find clients. That's just sometimes that's just a hard thing to open. I got a buddy that's a salesman. He could just be like, he'll sell you, like say he'll sell you the pen, or sell, Eskimo ice, and they're just amazing at it. And I think that's tough with creatives because they're typically not the extroverts, and they're phenomenal at their jobs, but you have to like balance that, and sometimes, creatives are socially awkward too. So the guy, people I work with are, they're like, oh, they don't even want to like talk to the client, but they do amazing work, so that's a tough one. And I think, telling the community like, hey, you need the network, but also, like really expand that. And then also just stand by your work and don't back down off your day rates. And especially like I said, that in the community, you don't want that stuff to like drop, it's that race to the bottom. And by the way, the clients that do the race to the bottom that want the lower end stuff, then they suffer 100%. For it. And then they weren't worth the time in general, because that always happens too. That happens all the time here where, they're like, oh, well, this guy will do it for 800. Well, the whole project, then fine. Then
go with him.
Go for it. And then it tanks and bombs.
And then they call you.
And then they're like, and then they call you, and then now they're out more money, or, I hate to say it, but sometimes even like the $2,000-$3,000 range. And then they're just like, oh, we spent that much. I was like, well, then, if you're not going to spend the quality right away up front, then you're going to lose more money in the long run, because it's not going to be what you want. You're going to be super picky about it, and dealing with those clients is tough, or just, just not even avoid.
100%. And then sometimes they'll call you and be like, hey, they did such a bad job. Can you edit it in post and fix it? Like, nah, dude, I ain't touching that.
I don't want to take I don't want to take the blame for that one.
I'm not getting involved there, bud.
No. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, so you were working with foundations and whatnot. So how, just getting that, time behind the camera, has that just helped a lot then with like, like this is how I need to shoot this client opposed to this client? And then, because I've seen your work and it's very like, it's awesome. It's cinematic. It works great. Are you, like I said, it's just getting that time behind the camera for these foundations. Like you said, it just kind of leapfrogged within that industry.
For sure. Yeah. I've kind of had my style probably for like 5 years now or so. And, I shoot with a lot of vintage glass, a lot of like imperfect, optics. Mm-hmm. I remember being at a shoot, and this is like a big agency shoot, high paid. And I was talking to the client, and he was asking me about my setup. And he was like, how much is that whole setup? And I was like, the camera body is, 7,000. I was like, but this lens, I actually bought this lens for $18 on eBay. And the look on his face, he was like, what did you say? And I was trust me, you hired me for a reason. This is what we need. And so, man, I've been really fortunate enough to where most people that reach out to me for work want my style of work. And I know not everybody has that. And there is times when I'll show up and I'll shoot super clean. It's rare. Normally I'm either shooting vintage glass, or I have some type of diffusion, pro mist, or a glimmer glass, or something in front of the lens to just take the digitalness off of it. And, my thing from the start is always being like, I really just want to tell stories through my visuals, like even if there's no dialogue, if you can see the pain in somebody's eyes, like I'm doing the right thing. If it's driving the story, and really that's just where like I want to live, with my creative. And, I realize as a creative, like you do have to branch out beyond just being a cinematographer, like to ensure that you don't ever hit one of those pockets again. And so for me, like I branched into like marketing consulting and social media management and advising. And so a lot of that stuff, accounts for, like a third of the income that I bring in. But that's the stuff too. Like I know if I lose the creative work, that work is not going anywhere, and I can add on to that.
That's what I've noticed too. The social media management is the new buzzword. And that's something that I've been dealing with in the last the last few months. It's not too long, where even for when I was just looking at full-time gigs, I'm like, all right, cool. I'll look at this. Is the social media manager aspect, but then
they want you to be a content creator too.
Filmmaker. Yeah, content creator, the filmmaker, the producer, the writer. Oh, by the way, I need you to know SEO. I need you to know the back analytics. I need you to know how to do email. You know what I mean? And also, can you do graphic design? World. And also, by the way, website management. So that's not even in the fucking. That's
you IT. Just described $8 million worth of salary.
Exactly. Yeah, and so you're seeing that out of companies, and then you're feeling it in the freelance world too, where. And it's true too, because I've seen frustrations with clients, and it's not on me. I'll deliver you, my work, and you love it, but then they're not seeing traction, and I'm like, well, that's not my job. Me. My job, that's not on me. They don't make $100 million films and go all right, well, let's just throw it into the theater and see what happens without marketing. The marketing budgets on films are, I think it was 50% of what you spend. Sometimes almost 1-to-1 or even more actually. So if you have a $50 million film, it's $25 to $50 million in marketing, which is insane. So if you're spending 20,000 on a project or 15 and you're not marketing it and you're just throwing it on YouTube or you're just throwing it, it's you're not going to get the numbers. Or if you don't artificially push it, which is what everybody does anyways, even the bigger companies, you need to get that in front of people's eyes. If you're not paying for that and you want to be organic, you're not going to get your ROI. And I think that's with some clients, they're trying to figure that, especially not say smaller mom and pop shops, but if you have a decent client that's paying you $5,000 a month on a retainer, or not even so much, maybe a little bit less, but they're hey, we just want to grow our business on, online, and then it's well, you need also, it's now you have to kind of pitch the social media marketing and help run the account and understand the SEOs and understand. And that's something that I've actually started to dive into. A good friend of mine is helping me along with that as well, of trying to expand into the social media market. So now we are, we are and we aren't, it's we're the filmmakers, we're the creatives, we're already running the projects. And now we have to be, you almost have to hold the hand through the whole process, including the post-production of social media management, which is lucrative. I mean, guys have done it. I know guys that are jumped right into social media management. A good friend of mine, and he's fucking, clearing over $300,000 within 6 months. Pretty much 6 months. But it's but all the businesses are looking for that. So that is kind of the new hot topic: is know your social media, and if you can pitch both.
100%.
Because the social media managers are editing photos. They're not creating a ton of content, but they can just do enough to where they're not going out physically sometimes.
No,
but,
I mean
it's curation.
Even doing reels and making videos now, they're doing it. But I was just thinking about something. What really helped me this past year, and it a lot of people are confused by it. When it comes to LinkedIn, I post a lot of personal stuff on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is not what people think it is. It's not this hardcore business platform anymore. It's a very hybrid platform. And I would post personal stories. I'd post ice bath videos. I kid you not, man. I posted an ice bath video last year where I talked about veterans being stubborn and not wanting to seek help. I got 15 messages, half of those being veteran or, businesses and nonprofits saying, I want to work with you, when none of that video was even about but it brought eyes to me. But I had companies in the overland space, dude, man, love what you said in the video. And so I went to your profile and saw you make really good work. You want to do some work next week? I got a client that needs I got a budget of $9,000 and I'll pay for all your travel too. Could you come out for a day shoot? Let's go, bro. And people want to connect to people. This is why I hate Instagram nowadays. It's so easy to swipe by things, and it's hard to remember pretty scenes. But if you can put something that stands out, that a story oh damn, I'm not the only one going through something like that. And then they remember your name, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 I mean, like I said, that's awesome. Especially hear about LinkedIn. I mean, it's a lot of people overlook that. I think it's still pretty much overlooked,
100%.
you know, and like I said, I was joking about it with you before. It's like seeing you see a lot of the officers, military officers posting their shit, and you're just like, ugh. But you get eyes on in the big corporations, like you said, they take
100%.
note. You know, I think that's,
dude, I mind you, man, I got out as E5. I made a post today that when I was talking about the vicarious trauma, dude, there's like 50 comments, and some of these comments on here are from like 1, 2-star generals, chief of staff, like, brother, thanks for the words. And I'm sitting here like, Roger that, sir. Like,
yeah.
And so, you're right though. There's definitely a lot of the officer side of things on there, but it's not, there's a lot of grunts on the platform as well. And, it's an overlooked platform by far.
It's still, absolutely. I like that you turned me on to it because, I think I'll probably
hit it hard, man. We can jump on a Zoom call sometime and I'll walk you through like just the ins and outs of it. Because I made a post about how no one utilizes the app. I made the post on the app, but then I posted on Facebook and Instagram as well. But super powerful platform. Everyone needs to be on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know a lot of, I think the power that it has is that the corporate is on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. Like everyone I know is on LinkedIn for work. And if you turn that into a little bit more of social media, which it's kind of is and it isn't, it's, it starts, it'll work to your benefit, especially if you're like, yep, I'm looking for work, and whatnot. So yeah, man. So what do you, what's your future hold, and where do you want to go with your filmmaking?
Yeah. So last year I formed my agency. So it's Wildwood, but it's pronounced VV instead of a W because Wildwood is taken by every wedding filmmaker and photographer. But I really liked it. And the 2 V's actually makes it a great conversation starter because everyone's like, oh, Wildwood, that's cool. And I was like, but the first W is 2 V's. And then they're like thinking about it like, oh, I like that. And they'll be like Wildwood, And so I'm embedding it into their brain, whether they want it there or not.
Yeah.
So I started that last year. And as of right now, I am the only employee that's paid full time. I have like 6 people that I subcontract a lot of work to, and I'm trying to build, that card. And my wife really wants me to get to the point where I can step back and I've got people that, can shoot the way that I shoot and deliver, the things that I can deliver and that the clients are asking me for. But I don't know if I could ever put the camera down, man. I love it. And,
that's tough. That's tough. Yeah.
This year, dude, I want to work on more passion projects. So I'm working on this running one about a trail runner, Kaylee. She, had a child at 18, abusive relationships, like in really abusive relationships, and then found trail running one day and it like saved her life, turned her life around. And, she went to college and has done really well for herself. She's married now and has, another child. And so we're telling her story because, a lot of people can relate to that. So that's a project I'm currently working on. That's a passion project. I want to do more of those. Big goal is just trying to work with as many like veteran organizations as I can this year. So I've already got a few, embers in the fire and waiting to send out some contracts for some of those. Cause I know the industry, dude, obviously like I know the community and I know how to tell other stories. I've been hired as a DP for a veteran nonprofit. And I sat there when the civilian that worked for the nonprofit that knew nothing about the veteran community asked the very first question and is like, so tell me like about the war and like what it's like to, kill people and lose friends. And I'm just sitting here like, oh Lord Jesus, and then the vet is looking at me and he's like, are you fucking with me, brother? You let her just say that, and so like, I love being able to tell stories through, for vets. And I think it's really powerful. And I was fortunate enough to some of the films I did for IFF, one of them being Weightless. I got phone calls after that video, like people that were like, dude, I was on my way out, brother. Like I was going to take my life. And I listened to what he was saying about how everything in nature has its place, the life, the death, it all belongs where it belongs. And I just need to find where I belong within that. and people like, dude, it just stuck. And like, so I went to a park and I was like, shit, dude, there's life to live. And so like, dude, if my film can help one person, I'm going to tell the story, you know, like I just want to tell more stories, man. I want to build my community. I want to work with more cool people, man. I want to get out on a job with you sometime. Let's do something together, you know, like,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, man. Dude, I just want to tell powerful stories. Like, I need to make money. I got 4 kids, but I want to do good shit, dude. I want to like leave an impact on this earth. And, you know, for my kids to know like, hey, their dad didn't suck at life. And, I'm trying to leave, you know, just trying to leave this place better than I got handed it, but the world's looking like pretty shitty right now. So I don't know what my kid's future is going to look like, but hey, yeah, man, just trying to do the right thing, bro. Stick around, better myself, like health wise. I started running. I've been doing the cold water therapy for a year. It changed my life. And I just want to tell more stories through film, brother.
Hell yeah. That's awesome. Well, thanks for coming on. What, where can people find you and, you know, contact you for your work?
For sure, man. Yep.
Like
so
that?
the website's just Wildwood, again, VVILD. Then wood is spelled the normal way.com. Instagram, Cameron Cush, and LinkedIn, Cameron Cushman. Be sure to hit me up on LinkedIn because I love LinkedIn and I want to help you get better at LinkedIn. So that's where y'all can find me.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on, brother.
I appreciate it.